what I was kind of lamenting to her, that what can a jewelry brand do in the middle of this pandemic? So the idea came about that we designed this necklace, but the coolest part is we designed it with a group of 11 female physicians. Almost all of them have been on the front lines of the pandemic.
My name is Linda Lorelle, and I'm asking you to have the courage to listen with an open mind to all of our voices, because our voices matter. Hey, everybody, it's Linda Lorelle, and this is Our Voices Matter podcast. Today's episode is intensely personal for me because the young woman who I have the honor of interviewing is Priyanka Murthy. Now, I first met Priyanka when she was a junior in high school because I was actually awarding her a Linda Lorelle scholarship. And ever since then, we have remained in touch. I mean, she's family, right? And I'm sure you will understand why I'm so proud of her when you hear her incredible story. So first of all, she's a Fulbright scholar in political science. She graduated from Northwestern University with a BA. She also got a JD from Northwestern, and that one, by the way, was cum laude. So not only is she a practicing attorney, but she's also the CEO and co-founder of a tech startup called Access 79. And it's all about jewelry. It's all about merging your passion with your purpose. And that's what Priyanka is all about. I so enjoyed sitting down and talking with her, and I cannot wait for you to meet her. Priyanka Murthy, it is so exciting to have you on the show for so many reasons, not the least of which is that I met you when you were a junior in high school and you received a scholarship from our scholarship fund. And oh my goodness, I remember that shy young girl and you have blossomed beyond belief. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Linda. You've always been there for me. I mean, this is like that's the amazing thing about the scholarship fund. It's not one of those you get handed a check and then you never hear from anybody again. You've been sort of connected with me we were just talking, your daughter Lindsay was 5 back then, and my son is about to turn 5 now. So
yes, and Lindsay's now 27. So.
Exactly, to give your audience an idea of how long this relationship has been around.
And it gives me chills to think back to how shy you were and the first time you got up in front of an audience to speak, and now to see, okay, let me just give them a little bit of your resume. Okay, so you're an attorney, you're a Fulbright scholar, you are the CEO of a wildly successful jewelry company and starting a new company. You're going to tell us all about that. And you're a mom, and your husband is a doctor, and you're doing all these amazing things, and you're very socially aware and socially conscious and doing things that are important. So we're going to unpack all of that. And let's start by talking about what I know is your passion, which is your jewelry company. So when I first realized you were doing jewelry design, it was with Arya Isha several years ago. And I looked and I thought, oh my God, A-list stars are wearing her jewelry. So tell me the first star that wore your jewelry and what your reaction was.
I remember very clearly it was Clare Danes, and she was going to something called Paley Fest in LA. And I just got an email sent to me from I think her stylist, very late that night. It was a Friday night. So I didn't check my email. Saturday morning, I wake up and it says, Claire has your earrings. She looks great. Here's a photo. And I was floored. And what ended up happening is, because that stylist that year was the it stylist, and I had stalked her and her team for the longest time, getting this one piece of jewelry in front of her and Claire Danes, but because Claire Danes wore those earrings, it had a ripple effect because that stylist was also so popular. So then suddenly all the other stylists whose emails and Instagram messages of mine were unanswered. Suddenly they started
all of a sudden they started answering you.
Yeah.
And so blew up, in other words.
Exactly. So then it got to Kerry Washington and Julia Roberts and Lupita and J-Lo and all those celebrities. Our jewelry was there.
And so Arya Isha was your first incarnation into, or your first, I guess, foray into the design business on your own. Yeah. And now it has evolved into something more, Access 79. So tell us about Access 79 and how it fits with Arya Isha.
Jewelry is something that you have to touch and feel to really kind of love it and decide whether you want it. Plus, it's a high value purchase. It's not a t-shirt. So there's a sort of level of like thought and consideration involved. So I called my clients and I said, hey, I have a new collection. I want you to see it. I'm not going to be able to travel that much this year or even the year afterward. Can I send it to you? And they said, sure. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry. I'll go ahead and take on the cost of sending it. And I used the best clients, the ones who I had known, et cetera. So I sent them these boxes and it was amazing, the response. It was not just how many pieces they bought and like the dollar value they spent. It was the feeling that they had. They felt so special, like that they had the opportunity to try jewelry on their own time, in their own just comfort, without someone kind of breathing down their neck or forcing them to make a decision. And then I was like, and it kept happening and I kept doing it. And then I'm like, there's something to this. So I did a deep dive into this kind of industry, like the actual real business of jewelry. And I found out that only 4% of jewelry is actually the transaction is being done online because of this problem. So people do a lot of searches, but they don't actually buy the jewelry online. It's not as much as they search and as much of jewelry that's out there. Mm-hmm. And it's because of this risk factor. People want to feel like they can touch and feel. Right. And then my generation, I'm an older millennial and younger millennials. We do everything digitally. We are on our phones. We do everything digitally. So how do you kind of blend the two together? We don't go into stores. I don't go into stores at all to buy anything anymore. Even pre-COVID, I do everything online, but jewelry is something that I feel like I have to touch and feel. And all of our customers are like this. So I thought this is like a brilliant idea for women. Mm-hmm. And then they can be in the driver's seat. They're not waiting for somebody to take them to a store and pick out their ring, and they're able to do it themselves. Then I started figuring out, in the sort of sideways of that, like parallel to that, I had a lot of other jewelry designer friends who were really, really amazing designers. I'm like a mediocre designer compared to them, but I was a better business person compared to them, right? Like I did things that made sense, like that allowed me to really make a living from doing design, whereas they were having trouble with that.
So you combined forces.
So yes, exactly. So I said, okay, look, I will be your sales channel and in this unique way. And I will give you information and data as to what is selling, what is not selling. So you can make decisions on how to make your jewelry. You don't want to make things. You're not trying to be in a museum. You don't want to make things that people don't want to buy. But part of the people's decisions to buy something, yes, of course, it has to do with how something looks, but there's so many other factors that are less subjective. But
so you get it right into their hands, and then they can just decide if they want to purchase it or not. So right. One question I have is, how do you make sure that somebody doesn't just keep the jewelry and you've lost your investment? I mean, how does that work?
And it's happened. Okay. When you grow enough that it does happen. So what the way it works is they pay a $149 deposit to receive their pieces, and it's refundable or applied to your purchase, right? If you end up buying it. But what that deposit allows us to do is put a hold on their card, right. And we can charge it if there's a certain time period in which they have to return the pieces.
Okay.
And it's become obvious to us in the 2 years that we've done this. Sometimes so much of fraud, we've stopped from just not even sending the jewelry because we can tell from the behavior of the customer.
Yeah, that they're not legit.
They're not. Yeah.
So, okay. So how's it going?
It's going great. COVID was it was like a situation where in the beginning, we basically everything stopped, and it was hard for us. And we even pulled back our marketing budget. We did so many things to like make sure we were sustaining ourselves. All of our growth projections kind of went out the window. But then toward the middle and now continuing on, our business model is one which is actually COVID friendly, right? Like people don't go into stores.
People are home. They're not going into stores. They have an opportunity to try, et cetera.
And there's jewelry, something where you can feel, it's something that makes you feel better. You know what I mean? Like, whereas clothing sometimes is more utilitarian. Like I know a lot of like professional clothing companies are struggling because people are not going to work, et cetera. Whereas with jewelry, it's not as much of a frequent purchase as like clothing is, but it is more of an emotional purchase. And I think
plus earrings and necklace you can wear on a Zoom call, right?
Exactly. We actually had an increase in those particular categories.
I bet. I'm sure you have. Because when I'm presentable from the waist up, but I'm telling you, I have leggings on from the leggings and slippers on the bottom, right? So
I'm shoeless. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. So now what you've done is you have taken this model and you've taken it to the next step to combine that with your passion for doing something, making a statement about kind of where we are right now. And the fact that your husband is a scientist, he's a doctor. So tell us about the latest jewelry design that you're so excited about. I can't wait for people to hear this.
Yeah. So, we have our community of ambassadors and clients and just supporters are these amazing women. They're like you, Linda. That's what we were talking about before. They are not only stylish, but they are full of substances. They have great jobs as CEOs of companies, lawyers. A lot of them are themselves physicians, and they're like friends of the brand in that we support each other, so one of our wonderful ambassadors, she happens to be a pediatric intensivist and NIH supported researcher in DC. So she's both a doctor and a scientist at the same, like she's doing both of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. She and I were, we've become such good friends through my business. And we were talking about what I was kind of lamenting to her, that what can a jewelry brand do in the middle of this pandemic, and my husband, I've also been watching my husband taking care of COVID patients, like the stress of being a cardiologist in the middle of COVID. And a part of me felt, what can we do as a jewelry company? We can't very well go and, take care of patients. So the idea came about that we designed this necklace, but the coolest part is we designed it with a group of 11 female physicians. Almost all of them have been on the front lines of the pandemic. They're a diverse group of women, both sort of ethnically, geographically. There's folks in LA, in Texas, in DC. And
you're in Florida.
I'm in Florida, yeah. There's some in Florida. And we got together and we worked on this design of this necklace. It took us some time. And we made it. And the whole point of this necklace is to show your support for science. It's to show it's a positive message here, which is when you wear this necklace, what you are telling folks is that I support science. And in the current world that we're living in, sometimes you literally want to like express yourself. Like you want to express your support for something. It's like having a bumper sticker on your car that says, I support our troops, just the bumper sticker is not going to change things, right? But it helps you kind of connect
Feel connected. What matters to you.
What matters to you at that time. And so this is the necklace. It can be worn in three ways, actually. So this is a helix. And, if you look at a double helix, and a helix, actually, if you look at history, it represents resilience. And then, of course, we have the inscription science. Can you see it? Terrible.
Okay. Yeah.
Science. And it can be worn in three ways. You can wear it just with the helix. You can take the helix off and wear just the science, or you can wear it together.
Wear them together.
So this has been an amazing campaign. We are working with a nonprofit called Project Hope. What Project Hope does is it provides relief. In general, they provide relief during any disasters. Particularly for COVID, they are providing PPE as well as vaccination services to underserved communities in the U.S., even abroad when things, have gone crazy in other places like India. They were there. Right now, they're focusing on what's going on here in the U.S. And it's a small organization, but their sort of stakeholders were so aligned with our mission. We had conversations about it. And so we are partnering with them to offer every sale you get the portion of a proceeds go to them.
Goes to Project Hope. Okay.
Yeah, Project Hope. Yeah. And it's going directly to getting vaccinations out. There are some folks who are having trouble getting vaccinated,
right? Getting access to it, being able to be transported to it because it's not close to where they live, and so Project Hope is helping them to get the vaccines, and this beautiful necklace that you and the physician scientists have designed is helping to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, and that's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. And we're seeing this, anytime our physicians go out there and talk about this necklace, whether it's on their social media platforms or email, we are getting so much engagement and conversation, not just about the necklace, but about why science matters, what their experience has been as mothers, as healthcare workers, as students. This is something where you don't, as much as I have I feel so much for the nurses and doctors who are out there on the front lines. COVID has touched every single person, and so this science movement that we're doing here, it's a way to feel connected and to be able to kind of band together around something that gives us hope, really, right?
And as you've been saying, this is very personal for you. So Raghu, your husband, as you said, is a cardiologist, and he ended up getting COVID, right?
We did, yeah.
You did as well.
Yeah.
And we're so divided over this this issue of vaccinations and masks. And I remember when the pandemic first began, I thought, okay, maybe this is the one thing that's going to bring us together because it affects all of us. And for a minute, it did, maybe a week or two. And then it started. And the divisions just have become ever wider. And, some of the things that we're seeing and hearing are really hard to believe. So here's what I want to ask you. And this is something that, I ask all of our guests because we talk a lot about being the other on this podcast. And right now we are othering each other when it comes to this issue of the vaccine and when it comes to this issue of masks. And so I have a couple of questions for you. As someone who is so closely connected to the medical community in all of the ways that we've already talked about, what do you think could happen to get us to the point where we are no longer othering each other as it relates to this issue? What's the message that your husband and other doctors that are in your orbit, what's the message that they want to get out that maybe people just aren't quite getting?
Yeah, I think this is such a wonderful question. And I've actually talked to my husband, Raghu, about this. In fact, maybe a month or two ago, he was interviewed by the New York Times I'll send you that link, Linda.
Oh, please do.
About vaccine. And this didn't make the interview, but I heard the article, but I heard him talking on the phone to the reporter about like our family's philosophy on this. Okay. So we are in a way other in Jacksonville, Florida, where we are, in that our views are sometimes in the minority in many situations, maybe in politics during election years. In this situation, what we have learned being sort of different here in Jacksonville is that the folks who we disagree with are actually wonderful people. You know, like the people who live across from us, who maybe had a different yard sign during elections from us, are the same people who, when I had a baby, were the first people to bring food. When we had a hurricane and we were out of town, they were the first people to check our homes, right? But their beliefs in certain things are different from us. So it was, for us, it was very hard during times of polarization to otherize our neighbors and friends, because we actually know them. They're not just a Facebook post or a 2-minute soundbite. They have families, they're kids, they're warm. Most people, I'm very Pollyanna, but most people in America are decent people, okay? And if you have like personal relationships with them, you realize that when you get to know them, but they disagree with you on something that to you seem totally crazy. Honestly, why are they disagreeing? So that's sort of the premise. That's what we've learned being quite different in North Florida. So we try to apply that to vaccination. When Raghu tells his patients and to get vaccinated, he never, ever belittles them or like talks down to them or tells them why their choice is bad. Instead, he tries to talk about why they should get the vaccine. Why, like, instead of judging folks about their choices and otherizing them, like calling them names, saying they're this way or that way, or they're just, deplorable or horrible or like stupid, like all those kinds of things. If you try to talk to them about the positive, I know it sounds so trite, but that's the thing that works, right? And my husband, he's such an affable guy, and he will like make jokes and he's convinced people. That's why he was interviewed by the Times, because he's actually going around like talking, like staying late and talking to people about, in addition to a job, why they should get vaccinated. And so I think it's really, really trying to understand who they are and why. Most of these folks are scared. They are scared. There's some who you're never going to change. You'll never change them. They know it's misinformation. They have still decided that that's what they want to believe. But a huge chunk of folks are scared. And misinformation is sort of making them double down on their fears. So Raghu, with his position in the community and sort of the weight that his words carry, he goes and talks to them and actually listens to them. And I think that's really important. For the rest of us, I wish we lived in a world, I do it still, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but I ask somebody, are you vaccinated? And if they say no, I get into a discussion with them, and maybe I've not changed their mind, but I have that conversation. So my answer to you is try to talk to the person, but you have to do it in a way in which you're not judging them. And that's the hardest part. That's really hard. It's an exercise.
You said something else that is critical. You said Raghu listens to them. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't judge and he listens. Mm-hmm. And that little nugget, those two little nuggets right there, we could apply to
everything. Yep.
On which we disagree. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Understanding, you said it so beautifully in the beginning, talking about your neighbors and your friends, and we may have different, signs in our yard, on election day, but these are the same people that brought me food when my child was sick, or, checked on my house when I was out of town, or whatever. So, and it's those commonalities, it's those places where we have to remind ourselves that we have those connections. And then when you get to that sticky point, It's okay. Let me hear you out. What are you thinking? Without judging. And that's the hard part.
Yes.
That's the hard part, is to listen without judging. And as you said, there's some people who are never going to change their minds. And it is what it is. But I think it's so fascinating to hear the way Raghu is approaching his patients and meeting them where they are and helping them to see it in a different light. What percentage of success would you say he's had in convincing someone? Do you know?
Yeah, he knows. I can ask him, and I remember him, and he's like a analytical guy, like I am too. But he talked about how it starts dropping off. Like the longer we're going through this pandemic, the harder his job is becoming, right? Because it's the difference between, it's easy to go from a C to a B plus, but it's really hard to go from an A to an A plus. You know what I mean? So he's been able to, now it's becoming harder and harder because the holdouts are so tied to their belief. So I'll find out, but in the beginning, he was able to do quite a bit of convincing.
Yeah. So when you think about times in your own life, I'm thinking now about that shy 17, or how old were you? Were you 16, 17? Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Under 18, I'll put it that way.
Okay. That shy girl who received a Linda Lorelle scholarship. And I remember having to kind of stand next to you and coax you onto the stage a little bit for the first time when you were speaking in front of a small audience of other scholars. And then I remember a few years later when you came back, you were at Northwestern at the time, and you flew in and you gave the keynote speech at one of our galas. I'll never forget that. And the difference between who you were at 18, and I could see that, and you had a list, and that was part of what I'm sure made you feel like you didn't quite fit in or belong at some point. So talk to me about how you dealt with feeling that way, and then how you overcame that and came out of it.
So it's funny because I feel like internally, I have always been extremely opinionated. I've always had an opinion on everything, but it has taken, just as you outlined, it took me time to like live it, to kind of grow into that. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell you, like in high school, in small groups, I would be the one to like question things, So I still remember we were talking, I think it was about like same-sex marriage. And this was in 1996 or 7, right? I don't even think it was marriage. I think it was just rights for folks who are gay. Mm-hmm. And there was some debate about it, and I was advocating that it's a human right, et cetera. And someone said, Priyanka, just agree. Why can't you just agree? This has always been my problem.
And you said,
yeah, which is it's been hard for me to just agree. I have to be able to analyze and understand what has happened. I have to say, like particularly middle school and high school, was frustrating for me because I didn't have the proper tools or confidence to be able to articulate confidently my disagreement. And I say disagreement, but what I mean is my opinion, whether it's agreement or disagreement, right? Right. But I think, the Linda Lorelle Scholarship, I would say it was real big turning point because, and Linda, you didn't mention that George Bush was also on that stage that you wanted me to come back out on. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's hold
on. It wasn't just
George Herbert Walker Bush. It was President Bush 41.
Yeah.
Who was an advisor on the advisory board of the scholarship fund. And I had forgotten that was the year he was there.
Yeah. He was out there. And I still remember this. I was standing outside at that wing and you're like, just go. I'm like, okay, just say, shake his hand. And I was like, okay. You mentioned you were like, oh yeah, there was a small group. Yeah, with George Herbert Walker Bush, who was wonderful. He was wonderful.
He was so lovely.
I have a funny Jeb Bush story to tell you. Now being in Florida. And so anyway, I'll tell you that in a minute. But yeah, something like that, where that's such a turning point, because I had never sort of spoken to such important people. So, and it's not just, I mean, of course he's a president, but even the other folks in the audience, and like the folks, the donors and people who we were walking and talking to, they were all so impressive. And here I was. But I knew that I had something to say. I just didn't know how to do it. And I think all of the events thereafter that you hosted, where we came, us, the scholarship recipients came, it kind of taught us how to do that. And then of course, Northwestern, they're also like, I really kind of found my stride. So it was, in a way, it was always kind of in me, but I just had to figure out a way, like what the way it was that I would kind of outline it to the world.
Oh my goodness. So, gosh, it's so wonderful to hear you sort of connect the dots. And I can see how you've taken so much of what you learned in your early life and how you're implementing it in your life today, and the way that you're living it and raising your son, and the mark that clearly you want to leave on the world, because you're so engaged and you're connecting not only what you do, your livelihood, but also to your passion and your belief system. And I just think that's so admirable and so beautiful. So my question now is, what is next for you in terms of what you want to achieve for yourself and your company, but also as you connect it to the broader society and just kind of where we are?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned this. The other day, I was in our office and showroom, and a former employee of ours was called. Her name was on a order, and so the vendor called her, and so a current team member was asking us, "Oh, who is she?" And I was like, "Oh." So I explained the story about how I thought this woman was so great, and she had such a bright future that I would take her everywhere to give her an opportunity to, like, I was presenting a investor pitch in front of some very, very important people, and she had no business coming per se, but like she came. So I was explaining, I was like, how I was really sort of grooming her because I saw so much potential in her, but it ultimately didn't work out because she got married and sort of decided that she didn't really want to have a career. But I was explaining how I said, I do this. It's not going to necessarily directly propel my business forward, but I do it because what else is there? In other words, like, I could be the most successful, jewelry tech company in the world, but I'm ultimately going to not be in this world. So what mark do I leave? It has to be how you develop the next generation. That's the only way that you do leave a mark, right? Like, is to develop the next generation. And so I think that is my goal in life, is to, it's funny, Raghu and I, we do this thing together. Jason Selk, he's a sports psychologist, and he has these really good leadership and just generally like mental toughness videos. So we watch them. Sometimes we're not as organized about when we watch them, but he has this thing where he makes you write a statement of what you view yourself as, right? And so my statement is not about, oh, I want to be a billionaire, or it's really about, I want to have influence on people's lives to help them, like, be the next generation. I mean, I bet you can relate to this more than anybody.
I'm sitting here choking back tears and trying not to cry. Seriously.
Yeah. So that's what so to me, that's what I want to do. Now, the tricky part is, I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to be doing it, right? So I don't have a plan. as to what is going to happen 5 years from now. But I don't think I need to, because if I incorporate that in everything I do, whether it's work, whether it's talking to my son, I drive him to school, and like, we turn off the music. He wants to listen to music. I turn it off and I make him talk to me. You know what I mean? Because then I can like influence him, and not sort of like indoctrinate him, but influence him and
influence him and help him understand, exactly the view of what it means to have a successful life. And it's not about money.
Yeah.
It's about leaving a mark.
It's about leaving a mark, and it's not like leaving a mark, a Wikipedia page, but more like, what do you
making an impact,
because I'm not going to be here forever. What's the point if I don't leave that mark, So that's, I hope that answers your question. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
It more than answers my question. And, in so many ways, I feel a little bit like your mom. And I know your mom, and I was at your wedding, and, I just, you're family to me. And to hear you talk about not only how you are living your life, but how you aspire to do even more, just know I am bursting with pride right now and love you so much. And just know that, I'm here for you. Lou is here for you. My sweet husband, Lou, is here for you. We always will be. And I'm just excited to now have introduced you to the Our Voices Matter audience. And of course, we will link to Access 79 and everything you're doing. And do send me that link to Raghu's New York Times article, because we'll link to that too. If there's one thing that I really hope people will take away from this, it's what you had to say about finding that common ground and really listening to people, and then being able to connect your passion to your purpose.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for spending some time with us today, and hug your family for us, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. And I can't wait until you can release the names of the celebs who are now wearing the new science necklace. So I know some names are coming soon. Hint, hint, that's a tease, everybody. I know who it is, but we just can't say. Not yet, but it's coming. It's coming. And I'm going to be wearing mine soon too. So, all right. Wishing you all the best, my dear.
Thank you.
Okay. So guilty as charged. I feel like a proud mom, and I know I sounded like a proud mom, and that's just because I am. And I just think she is such an amazing young woman. And when I look at her and so many other young people who are forging their way in our world, it gives me so much hope, because I know that young people like Priyanka are going to lead us in the direction that we need to go. So thank you, Priyanka, once again. Thank all of you for giving her permission to speak and for having the courage to listen with an open mind. We, of course, will link to everything we said we would link to in the show notes. And I hope you'll be sure and check those out and support what she's doing, especially in support of science. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.